And welcome to the special wrap-up edition of the Michigan Insider Podcast. We are trying a little something different as we are bringing the podcast to the video stream tonight with a couple of special guests in the breakdown with Steve Lorenz, Brice, Marich, and I breaking down the Michigan signing class of 2021 as the Wolverines had a big day. They were able to hold on to the commitment of one Mr. Xavier Worthy. They were able to go ahead and add to the fold the top running back in recent memory to commit to the University of Michigan, an elite prospect, and arguably the top target on the board from start to finish. I mean, when you put Donovan Edwards on the board and add him to J.J. McCarthy, the centerpiece of the class, who we talked to earlier in the show or earlier in the day, a guy who was a mainstay, a steadying force and presence for the University of Michigan in this obviously uncertain time. The coaching staff, the yeoman's effort to stave off a lot of the negative recruiting that understandably comes anyway, but comes even more when you consider that there is, there's an extension to be signed. And that was a frank discussion that was had with a lot of most of the recruits. Some were affected by it, as the Wolverines had a couple of casualties in this year's recruiting class. They wound up losing a guy in Quentin Somerville that had been committed for quite some time. He was a guy that, it was a Sean Nua special, if you will, a guy who was really, really tied to the coaching staff and the coaches as much as he was Michigan. And I think they made it a bridge too far in order to stay committed. And same thing with Brandon Jennings. But if you consider the uncertainty, the negative recruiting that was going on, and if you would have told me a couple of weeks ago that those were the only two players they lost, that they kept Xavier Worthy, that they added Donovan Edwards, and we will find out in a matter of 20 minutes or so, what's going to happen with one Mr. Jaden McBurrows? Feeling pretty good about Jaden. It was it's been a drama-filled march to the end, but the Wolverines are in very good shape, I think. But here's the thing. It's not just the Jaden McBurrows show that we're waiting on. You could also say one Mr. Jaden Hood. Now, Jaden Hood, in case you missed it, is a linebacker commit for the University of Michigan, Fort Lauderdale St. Thomas Aquinas. A young man that he was set to sign. He was set to sign in February. Hadn't been to the University of Michigan yet. Understand the thought to maybe delay it a bit. But I started hearing rumblings a little bit earlier today that maybe Jaden Hood would sign early. And I got to thinking, maybe we should have a special guest on this podcast episode. We will have Brice Marich joining us shortly. Join us a little down the line. We're also going to have Steve Lorenz joining us a little later. We're going to be taking questions from the crowd, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, as we are simulcasting live on all streams. But right now, let's add Jaden Hood to the phone. Mr. Hood, if you could unmute your mic. There you go. Jaden, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great, man. Glad that you could join us. And so, as I said, I had been hearing earlier in the afternoon that you had kind of reconsidered. You started to think that, hey, maybe, just maybe, I would sign early. So here you are. And it seems like you have some news for the Maize and Blue. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I was, like you said, I was intending on signing in February. And I prayed, and I woke up this morning and I said, there's no better time to be a Wolverine. So I'm signing today.
All right. So Jaden Hood officially in the fold, a thumper of a linebacker. And one of the things that when I came down to see you, Jaden, it was very, very clear as you were making the transition into Aquinas that it's a process, man. It's about learning the system. I mean, you got a lot of great players around you, figuring out how you fit into that mix. So from where you were when I came to see you to where you are now, kind of talk about your progress in the defense.
Yeah, it's been a great process, definitely interesting process. Like you said, it started off trying to understand the process, understand the system, get used to it, and then when playoffs hit, the light kind of went on, and I've been having really good games. Last game I had a lot of tackles, had an interception, so it's definitely on, and I'm ready for the states Saturday.
Yeah, so you have some football left. So let's get into the decision on why Michigan. I see your family in the background. This is definitely a family decision. Now, I ask you this when you committed, Jaden. You're a Florida guy. Mamas don't necessarily like their babies to go that far away from home. And I can see mom in the background kind of saying, I don't know. So what was it about Michigan that made you comfortable, that made your family comfortable with saying, you know what? You can make this trek. This is the move for you to make, for you to go away from home and go to the University of Michigan.
Yeah, so regardless, I have a great relationship with Coach Harbaugh, Coach Brown, and Coach BJ. I like them a lot. I like the coaching staff. I like what they did this year, despite what people have said. But besides my feelings towards them, it's a business move. So Michigan has a great tradition, great at player development. They've been putting a lot of linebackers in the league recently. They got a great, rich history, great network system, great in academics, and it was just overall just everything I was looking for. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer.
All right, and so now as you kind of look at this class, man, a class that has a linebacker talent and a position that really needs guys to be able to come in and be ready to contribute early. Has Michigan talked to you about how you might fit in that mix? What linebacker position they're kind of looking at you for?
Yeah, so Cam McBurrows was there. He was hurt this season, so he didn't get to play as much. But that's the type of linebacker they want. Devin Bush, he left. He's in the league right now. That's the type of linebacker they want. That's the type of linebacker they said they need, and they see that in me, and they want me to come in and do what they did and do it to my best ability. You know what I mean? They said that they're not, they won't put me in that fire as soon as I get there. You know what I mean? To go ahead and compete and see what I can do. So I'm very thankful for that. They believe in me like that.
All right, and so as you sort of lay things out the rest of your high school career, you guys have a big game obviously ahead of you. It seems like, I know when I came to watch you guys play a little bit earlier in the season, you talked about your transition. It really felt like as a team, you guys were still kind of adjusting. I think the squad you guys played like 3 or 4 games already. Where are you guys as a team now compared to a few weeks ago?
Oh yeah, it's night and day different. Coach Taylor, he gives the calls, man. Everybody knows the calls. We're not confused. I probably saw that. Everybody's together now. There's a lot of leaders on the defense, so we're not relying on me. I call the plays, but everybody gets the calls. They do their job. For us, we believe in your 111. So it takes the full defense to win. So we really bought into that, and it came together.
All right, so I got to ask you this question because this is one that I put to all of the guys who decided to go ahead and still sign with Michigan. There was a lot of speculation about the future of the coaching staff. There was a subpar season. There were schools that were definitely using those things, the downturn on the field, the uncertainty about the coaching staff, to really kind of maybe try to wedge some of the commits out, to make them think twice, to make them second guess. Some did. Most of them, like yourself, decided to stay with Michigan. Why is that the case for you? Through all of the speculation about the coaches, through obviously how things didn't go how they wanted on the football field, what made you say, hey, you know what, I'm going to stick with Michigan?
Yeah, so really what it is, and like I said, I have great respect, great relationship with Coach BJ, Coach Harbaugh, Coach Brown. But like I said, it's a business decision, and not only do you buy into the coach staff, but you buy into the school and the culture and the traditions and everything they have. So not only did I buy into the coach staff, I actually bought into Michigan itself. So that's it's not just I went for the coaching. I went because I wanted to go to Michigan.
Gotcha. All right. So kind of break down this state championship game and give us a preview. I know I mean, it's not just people in Florida that are going to be watching. You got a gang of Michigan fans that are ready to watch as well. So tell us what we can expect to see when Aquinas takes the football field.
Yeah, so it's a rematch. We played Edgewater. St. Thomas did play Edgewater last year. We beat them. They coming back. They mad. And, we're not going to let them come beat us. Like I said, our defense is fired up. And they run the ball a lot, so I'm going to be coming down here all game. So,
well, hey, I know you had your family with you. I know if you want to send a message to your fam so everyone can see how much your family, because no one gets there alone, man. It's not like you did this by yourself. What about your family helping you get here?
Yeah, they definitely helped me out a lot. I wouldn't, like you said, I wouldn't be here without them. They helped me with a lot of decisions. I definitely went to rough times during this season, but they were there. They helped me build me back up. They gave me a lot of wisdom and advice and confidence and motivation, and that's kind of why I'm here, because of them.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see. I mean, there's so many Michigan fans sending messages to you, Jaden. I can't keep up with them all. Just know there are hundreds of Michigan fans in here wishing you go Blues and welcome to Wolverine Nation. Appreciate you coming on with us tonight. Congratulations on being a Wolverine, and we'll see you soon, young man. Good luck in the state title game.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Congratulations. That's Jaden Hood and Jaden's family. Welcome to Wolverine Nation, as James Blow said. Thanks a lot, guys. All right, so now joining the fold is one Mr. Brice Marich, part of the crew over at the Michigan Insider. And Brice, thanks so much for this impromptu session, man. This impromptu session. You came on and, you were able to move your schedule around and make it in with us. So tell me what you think of this class, man.
To be honest, I think, given all the circumstances, it's pretty impressive. I mean, if you think about it, they've only lost 2 defensive prospects, and that's kind of expected with everything that's going on in terms of just the questions looming around the program of what coaches might be back, and how's the team going to rebound after this, and just everything going on. But in terms of what they did, they got their top overall target in Donovan Edwards. They got their number 1 wide receiver target. They got the number 1 target from quarterback for them. And offensively, they did 10 times better than probably most thought. Defensively, they're still working there, but there's a lot of good pieces there that can be plug and play, like Junior Colson, who's a linebacker. And several of these guys are coming in early, which will help as well.
All right. So, look, the Wolverines were able to keep Xavier Worthy in the fold. That wound up being huge, Brice. Huge in the grand scheme of things. A guy who is an electric member of this class. And there were, I got to give the listeners, the viewers, the Michigan fans in the mix a lot of credit. And one of them in particular, Mike T, he said, Sam, Anthony Carter. Now, Brice, I can't even remember watching Anthony Carter live. I mean, I was barely, crawling when Anthony Carter played. I remember AC more with the Minnesota Vikings than I do with the University of Michigan, but we've all seen the clips, right? We've all seen the retro and the throwback games. And when I watch Xavier Worthy on the field, man, that is an excellent comparison. I mean, he gives you that same elite straight line speed. So he's a guy 6'1", 160 pounds, can 10.5, 500 meter. He says 10.2, 10.3 now, but he's not just a straight track guy. You know how what they say about track guys, you put them on a track, they can go 0 to 60 faster than most human beings. But when you put them on the football field, can they change direction? Can they be sudden? Can they cut butter? This kid can do that too. And you got a chance to see him when you were out in Arizona.
Like you said, 10, 5.55, 100-meter dash. He recorded as only a sophomore. So you got to think, too, those numbers would have probably improved his junior and senior season. But when I saw him in Arizona, like you said, that speed is just – it's on a whole nother level. It's one of those things of where he just got that – he's got that, like, lightning in a bottle. You can put him at any position. And honestly, he's a guy that can take a 5-yard slant, like I said, and take it 60 yards to the house. He's that impressive, and he's sure the field vertically. He can do quite a few things with just his overall talent, athleticism, and he's a guy that instantly can come in and help your offense from day one as well.
Yeah, and then of course Donovan. I mean, it goes without saying a huge pledge for Michigan, huge pledge, recruiting effort, collective recruiting effort for the staff. As you know, there is every reason for people to be predicting Georgia, predicting Oklahoma, Notre Dame making a late surge. But getting out to his press conference today, Brice, and I know you made your rounds around the state, and I want to dig into that. Is because Brice, you started in Detroit. Was it Detroit, Lansing, and then Sterling Heights? Was that your crisscross around mid and southeastern Michigan? Yeah. So we will get to your
that was
trek.
it. I was.
Yeah, we'll get to your trek shortly. For me, it was West Bloomfield, and it was a jam-packed presser as Donovan Edwards decided to go blue, and it was a decision that he, that a lot of people question whether he could really come to with the uncertainty that we talked about. I mean, this offense that he wants to know more about, right? Will they get more passes to the running backs? Will how many backs will they rotate? I mean, these are questions that he's putting to the staff. You had other coaches saying, "Well, you're putting these questions to the staff. Is that staff going to be there? I mean, they're telling you you're going to throw the football more to the backs. Are they going to be calling those plays?" It's a legit question. It's a legit question. But he ultimately decided that it really didn't matter. Really didn't matter what offense. Really didn't matter what coach. Really didn't matter what scheme. It mattered more to him the opportunity to be, to be a guy that was part of the change at Michigan. That was the opportunity to make a mark, and a mark that would be different. Like he could go to Georgia and be big time, right? I think he has the kind of talent to have been big time wherever he went. He could have been a big time player at Notre Dame, Oklahoma, any of these schools. But being big time at Georgia as a Michigan kid versus being big time in Michigan as a Michigan kid, I think that difference really rang with him, Brice. I think that was a big deal in the grand scheme of things. I think, Ron Bellamy, his coach, who I think, mark this down, Ron Bellamy will be a college football coach. Ron Bellamy should be a college football coach. So somewhere, someone is going to hire Ron Bellamy. He's going to be a hell of a recruiter. He played the game at a high level in the pros. He's obviously a high school coach now, ready to make that jump. I think he is. But in the here and now, Michigan was very, very fortunate that he was Donovan Edwards' head coach. Not because he pushed Donovan to Michigan, because I think he really was focused on not doing that. He was focused on not making it be all about Michigan. I think the advantage Michigan had with Ron Bellamy there was that he kept the negative recruiting from impacting the recruitment negatively, if you understand what I'm saying. I mean, if it's just a coach who doesn't give a damn about Michigan in that seat, he's letting all those messages about uncertainty about Michigan kind of really sink in and kind of just let the kid get hammered with that. Man, is Harbaugh going to be there? And, how do you know they're going to be able to keep these recruits in this class? And you don't know what offense you're going to be running. I mean, a coach could allow a kid to get bombarded with that. What Ron did was really make each school focus on what they sell. Don't focus on what the other school can't sell. What they sell. And that did Michigan a huge service. The other thing that he did that really helped Michigan was that I think the most valuable part of recruiting relationships, Brice, is that to know where you stand. How many times have we noticed in recruiting, hey, some schools are saying they think they're in good shape with Steve Lorenz. They think they're in good shape with Josh Hinchke, top recruits in the country, right? And they aren't anywhere close to the top because they don't have anyone around those recruitments to really give them the low on where they stand. Man, you're kind of trailing Georgia for this. He's telling you everyone's even, but you're probably trailing Notre Dame. And here's why. here's what you need to do to improve. That is where Ron Bellamy really helped them. It was a huge, huge deal. And the coaches did a great job of executing on that plan, from Jay Harbaugh, who did a tremendous job as his would-be position coach and forging a relationship and really, I think answering some of the questions that Donovan had about from the technical standpoint of running back development. I think that was a big question for him. I think Jim Harbaugh really around January, February got more involved in building a relationship. He always recruited Donovan, but it became more about making that personal touch. And I think the part that he kept hammering is, look, man, you're a guy from this state. You're the top guy from this state. Do you know what it means if you stay here and you do it big here? It's different. It's different if you do it at home. And I think that was a big part of the message. I think Josh Gaddis selling the offense was a big part of the message. It was a collective effort. They all deserve huge, high marks, Brice. But if I have to give someone the highest mark in the fold, is really Ron Bellamy. I think he did a tremendous job. We still got you there, right?
People to credit for Donovan. Still there.
Yeah. You got the bad sale right now. You got the bad sale. It's all right. It'll clear up. People want to hear from you, Brice. We will get an update on Jaden McBurrows, as well as he is set to make his decision here in a matter of moments. We have Steve Lorenz covering that right now, as a matter of fact. And I'm feeling really good about Mr. McBurrows. It is a huge, huge, huge position of need, as we all saw. We know that Michigan needs corners in the worst way. And as I went to watch him play, you guys know we are 24/7 through and through, right? 24/7. Love my guys. Love our analysts, our team of analysts. Tremendous at doing the rankings, Brice. But I think Jaden McBurrows is underrated. I mean, watching him live. You remember when I was down in Fort Lauderdale and we were talking on the phone? I said, Brice, man, I know what I'm looking at. I don't do the rankings. I know what I'm looking at. This guy is very much in the mold of guys that we've seen do well at Michigan here in recent memory. Very much in the mold of JD or Jordan Lewis. Very much in the mold of David Long, of Vert Hill. Those were all 4-star guys, Brice. I don't see that on a high school level. I don't see the difference. I mean, I watched this kid go against the #1 receiver in the country in the 2023 class. And before you say, it's 2023, Brandon Ennis is big time. Brandon Ennis would be a highly rated receiver in this class. He would be a 4-star right now. So make no mistake, it was a big time. And to make my point, Brandon Ennis had, Brice, in the first quarter against Jaden McBurrows, he must have had, what did the guy have, like 5-6 receptions for like 100 yards and a touchdown? I mean, he was killing in that first quarter. In the first quarter. Next 3 quarters went to Jaden McBurrows. And it was not lost on me that it was like game 3 or 4 for Brandon Ennis' squad. And it was like they were just getting out to shoot. First game for Jaden McBurrows. Had to knock the rust off. And when he did, Brice, those next 3 quarters, it was like, man, this dude is out here. He's out here killing. I got to find the clip at the end of the game where he laid one of the biggest hits of the season. That's the other thing that really stands out to me about Jaden McBurrows. Not just the cover guy, Brice. He'll come up and hit you.
So you watch his junior film, and something that's really impressive is when he committed, a lot of people didn't kind of know about him. He's a low 3-star, middle 3-star type of prospect, but you looked at his offer list, and you're like, something's not adding up, and one of the things was his speed. But as you said, you watched him play, and he's the guy that he does so many other things. Plus, he's worked on his speed that he has become an overall player. And honestly, a guy that Michigan really needs to keep in this class. He's very important. I know Michigan lost, Quinn Somerville, Brandon Jennings, 2 guys along the defensive front. But in terms of a position of need in this class, corner is huge. And so to keep a guy, like you said, Sam, who's arguably at least a 4-star type of prospect, you need those guys. And you kind of saw Michigan struggled. And so he's a guy that could come in, at least if he doesn't start or play, he can at least push those upperclassmen. That's something you need as well.
Yeah. All right. So Brice, tell us about your travels, man. Tell us about it starts out in the morning in the D. Then you make your way all the way across the state to East Lansing to catch up with Andre Anthony before coming back to Sterling Heights Stevenson. So take us across the state.
So first thing was I went to Raheem Anderson's signing at Cass Tech. And it was, they had put together a really nice thing with Cass Tech. They had about 7 guys sign, and Raheem, I've talked about it several times. He's just a true captain. He's a true leader. He kind of pointed out why Michigan was the choice for him. He said, obviously, I love the coaches. I love everything they're doing there, but I also love the university as a whole. And so regardless of the coaches, I was coming to Michigan, and I just like everything they got going on. He wanted mechanical engineering. He's a bright future ahead of him. But he's a guy that's like, listen, I'm pulling early. I want to play right away. And I want to show the coaches that I'm here to make a move. I don't want to sit on the bench. I want to make a move. And so he said, I'm coming in plus this class with the mindset of we want to, change the culture. We want to make an impact right away. We're not a class that wants to sit around and kind of wait. We want to show that this was just a look on the radar sort of thing.
Man, yeah, so it's like a jamming device going on against you right now, Brice. I don't know who doesn't like Brice Marich, but they are really hitting you on the cell hell this evening. But it's fine. I talked to Andre this morning as well, and the thing that is intriguing about Andre Anthony when you talk about his athletic versatility, and Brice, if you can if you want to sort of reconnect, let me know and we can try to get you in a better connection. But Andre Anthony was able to, I think, show this season as a return man, as a receiver. I think you got a better feel for his explosion. I mean, Notre Dame recruited him as a corner for some time. I think is really noteworthy when you talk about his athletic versatility. But that was one of the guys I thought that was most in question in this class. And ultimately, I think it was he grew up a Michigan fan. B, I think he felt the connection with the class. And this receiver class in particular, Brice, when you think you got the speed guy, the pure speed guy in Xavier Worthy, I think you got the physical, sort of the physical guy, the guy that's going to be able to muscle you off the line, make the tough contested catches, has good speed too in Christian Dixon. And then maybe the in-between guy in Andre Anthony. I think this is a receiver core in this class that really complements one another.
All 3 kind of are unique in their own way. Andre's the in-between guy where he's kind of bigger, 6'2", 175, but he can still really move. Xavier's that speedster where you can put him inside, you can put him outside. Either way, he's going to stretch the field with his speed and athleticism. And then Christian Dixon is your more bigger body, bulkier, kind of Nico Collins type of version of a wideout who can just bully smaller defenders on the outside. So all 3 complement each other really well. And that's something that Michigan needs in this offense. They got a lot of short, more quicker type of wideouts, but in terms of that versatility and also the height and length, they don't really have that right on the outside. With Andre and with Christian Dixon, they're adding 2 of those elements to the offense.
All right. So then after Andre, what was next on the travels schedule?
So last but not least, got to see 6'6", 305 Giovanni Ohadi, longest kid who's been committed for 2 years. Said when I talked to him, he never wavered. He's, at the time, he was hearing from Alabama, Clemson, LSU. Once he committed, his coach said, listen, are you going to be a man of your word or are you not? And so he said, I'm a man of my word. And he's stuck with that. And it showed because he's never wavered. He's enrolling early. And he's a guy that once he comes in, same thing with Raheem. He's trying to play right away. He's trying to show the coaches, he's trying to learn all the plays. And he's joked with me. He said, I got the playbook today from Coach Ed Warner. And he just laughed at how big it was. He's like, this is a lot bigger than my high school playbook. So he's a guy that, he's physically impressive. He looks like a grown man. He looks older than me. He looks probably older than you, Sam. He's only 16, 17, but the guy looks like he's 35 with a couple kids. It's pretty impressive. So in terms of his game, he's a big, physical, dominant road grader, offensive tackle. He can move people pretty easily. And he's the guy that has versatility. He's going to play tackle, but if Michigan wanted to, they could slide him inside as well. So that also helps with him.
All right, so got an update from Steve Lorenz, who will be joining us in about 15 minutes. Said it'll probably be 10 to 15 for Jaden McBurrows to give the word. And to sort of lay things out, it's funny, man. I did an interview with him Monday night, and we must have been talking for 5 minutes. And Brice, I could see. So he talked to the Michigan coaches. So it was Harbaugh, Zordich, and Don Brown that he talked to, and I guess it was Sunday. And so I got word after that. You talk to guys in class circles. I mean, the word gets around. You get a feel for what's happening on these calls, right? So I knew what happened on the call. He had given them word that basically he was solid. He was locked in, right? So I talked to him Monday night, and we talked for a good 5 minutes. And he's like, man, it doesn't matter about the record. Michigan is always going to be Michigan. Look, it's about the school. It's not about the coaches when we talk about speculation. I mean, all of these things where he's like locked into his decision. And so it's like the end of like 5.5 minutes in, and then we start talking about coming on the signing day extravaganza Wednesday morning or this morning. Let me lock you in for a time. And he's like, well, I don't know. I don't know what time it's going to be. I don't know when it's going to go. And it just sounded really shaky. So I said, man, hey, are you 100% sure you're going to commit to Michigan? And he said, I got to pray on it. And I said, hold up, man. Hold up. We just talked for 5. We just did an interview. If I had hung up and I didn't try to get you on the show, I'm thinking you're locked into this class. So I could see how Michigan in a Zoom session, a virtual in-home on Sunday, I could see how they could talk to him for the entire thing and think that he's cool, he's straight, he's locked in. Clearly he wasn't, though. He was wavering. He was praying on it. Miami being the school pushing the hardest. Miami having a really good season, except for the licking they took to, I think it was Carolina.
North Carolina. Yeah,
beat them pretty bad last Saturday. So, and that obviously I don't think played a role in the game or in his recruitment. But I think that the staying close to home kind of factored into it, and just a little bit of doubt about, hey, Michigan without these coaches. But I think ultimately, because I think he's going to stick with Michigan. My gut tells me that that's the case, that he's gonna remain with the Wolverines. I think it's that connection, the connection that he's formed with the school over time, and the connection that he formed with the class. Brice, if you go back to mid-November, when some years down the line, if this class winds up being successful, right, where if J.J. McCarthy balls out and Rob Moore balls out and Jaden McBurrows turns into a guy. I mean, these are all guys that came to that dead period visit that weekend, Brice. And we thought it would be big. We thought it would be significant. I mean, hell, you also had Damani Jackson and Will Johnson, who we'll talk about here coming up. But you also had them on that visit, Brice. But we thought it was big at the time. I think as we saw most of those guys or all those guys stay locked in, and as we see what I think is going to happen with Jaden McBurrows recommitting or affirming his commitment to the University of Michigan, in my opinion, I think that dead period visit weekend will have loomed extremely large in that.
So Michigan's usually good with on-campus just visits. And they didn't get that opportunity with the pandemic. That was something that no school got with, the pandemic. But from that one weekend alone, which was put together by J.J. McCarthy and his family, you could see it just reap the benefits of just being on campus and just walking around, chilling with the guys. They all bonded. They all connected. And it was something that not only did they connect, but they also saw a future And so that's something that I feel like Jaden McBurrows, who committed to Michigan without ever seeing, without ever, checking out the campus except for virtual visits, finally got that experience. And so that's why I was saying, when you talk to Jaden Hood, his teammate, for him to now say, hey, I'm coming to Michigan. And again, he's never seen Michigan. Props to the staff.
Yeah, man.
Because I
so I think it's a great point, Brice. I mean, say what you want. I mean, I know there's a big sentiment about who should go, who should stay, that whole nine. What no one can say about this staff is that they didn't all work hard to the wire. Now, is it likely that there's going to be turnover? I think it's virtually certain that there's going to be some turnover. You wouldn't know it by how they recruited this class, how hard every one of these guys worked despite that uncertainty. And that's, man, you put yourself in those shoes. It's not just the job. It's your livelihood. It's your family. You're thinking about all that, and you got to put it all in on getting these recruits. And you wouldn't know that there was any uncertainty with any of these guys with the way that they recruited. So I think that is extremely commendable, and has helped Michigan secure what I think is as good a class as you could expect, a better class than you should have expected under the circumstances. I don't know how. Look, if you were being real about it, you were expecting Michigan to lose a bunch of commitments as a result of this uncertainty, because Michigan had the opportunity to step forth and say, hey, this extension is getting done. They didn't do that. Now, Harbaugh made it very clear, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. I'm Michigan. I want to coach here. This is my number one option, if you will. But clearly there is some, there are some conversations. There are some conversations to be had, some exploration to be done. And by exploration, hey, what are the things what are the issues? Is it a personnel issue? Is it COVID? Was it just COVID, or is it more than COVID? Is there an issue with transfers, or is it just happenstance? Is there a development issue, or is it a scouting issue? Is it both? Are there recruiting issues? I mean, these kind of a deep dive into, anything that may have been a contributing factor to them not living up to expectations. And once you find the answers to those questions, how do you correct them? Is it a philosophical change? Is it staff retooling? Is it both? I think that's the kind of thing when I hear Ward Manuel say, we're going to talk about it after the season. I mean, you could dot your I's and cross your T's on the contract last week, right? I think this is deeper than that, Brice. That's why I think it takes time. And then in that time, both sides, even though that's not what Jim Harbaugh is out to do, he is out to be the coach of the University of Michigan. But if Michigan is sort of pondering its options, then I think it's reasonable to think and legitimate for him to do that, for him to go ahead and look. All right, so I think the news is in. Jaden McBurrows, is that right, Brice? Is Jaden McBurrows in the fold?
Let me check.
Go ahead and check it out. And
Let me check.
All right. Because I think Steve Lorenz is saying he's ready to come in. We get Steve Lorenz in the fold. If Steve Lorenz is coming in, that means Jaden McBurrows is in.
He's in.
Jaden McBurrows in the fold. All right, so I had that story already. It was already ready. Brice was just wait to release it. You don't want to ruin a kid's announcement. You know what I'm saying?
No, never.
But it's a huge piece to the puzzle when you consider how much of a need that position is. A guy who I think will contend for playing time off the bat, off the rip. I think he, size and strength wise, I mean, he's not a tall guy, but I'm talking about where he is physically. I think he'll be ready to compete right away. So that is a huge deal. And we're going to add Steve Lorenz to the mix. Steve, how are you, my friend? Good evening. How are you?
What's up, guys? No camera again.
Hey man, but that's
Been a long day.
That's the beauty of technology. You can be on the mic and not necessarily be on camera, which is how this is working. But give us, before we start taking questions, and folks, if you have recruiting questions, team questions that you want to throw at us, this is going to be our most interactive sort of podcast that we've had, because we can actually take your questions live. So start putting those in the chat boxes, whether you're Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube. We can start taking your questions on this class, on future classes, on the current team, and we'll start dialing them up. But that's after we get Steve Lorenz's input. Give us your breakdown of this 2021 class, Steve. What do you think of Michigan's haul?
I mean, I think all things considered, the context of the situation, I think Michigan finished about as well as they probably could have. I think of the guys that we thought might have been shaky, I think they got the two most important ones in McBurrows and Worthy to sign on. I think Brandon Jennings could be a good player in a certain scheme. Quentin Somerville, maybe more of like a really needs a niche. I think at the college level, it'd be interesting to see how UCLA uses a player like him. But I think Michigan can, if they choose to, go after prospects at those spots still. I think they could find some guys. So, getting McBurrows back was really, really big. Worthy speaks for itself. And then obviously, Donovan Edwards being the big fish. I mean, they've been recruiting him literally for like 2 years. So to see that culminate, in a big commitment. And again, within the context of how this season has played out, as a Michigan fan, I mean, you should be happy. And obviously not happy in the grand scheme right now. Like, things aren't good big picture-wise. But for today, I think Michigan did about as well as you could have asked them to do. Yeah,
no doubt. I didn't expect it. I'm be honest with you. I thought they'd lose more than they lost. It certainly the compelling argument from other schools. I almost don't call it negative recruiting. I mean, to me, negative recruiting kind of has a hint of untruth. I do think it says something about what your focus is. If you're constantly talking about what the other team doesn't have and what you do, to some people, that's negative. That's negative recruiting. Not necessarily to me. It's kind of an interesting focus, if anything. But what some of these other schools are pointing out, Brice and Steve, was actually legit. Jim Harbaugh is saying that he wants to be here. He plans to be here. And some schools are saying, but yeah, they haven't put the extension on the table for him to sign yet. And that was legit. And it's amazing that they held on to the overwhelming majority of the class despite that, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, if you're telling the truth, it's not really negative, correct? Like you said, there's a little bit of facetiousness or some fibs in like what negative recruiting really is, but what Michigan's been going through is real. I mean, we've been talking about it the last 3, 4, 5 weeks, and they really didn't do that. The Harbaugh situation has not been figured out the way we had kind of thought or opined that they maybe should, and I think that adds even more it's impressive that they were able to kind of keep this all together as much as they did. I know the other guy we talked about, I'm sure you guys have even talked about him already, is JJ McCarthy, obviously, right? I mean, it being a huge, huge, huge part of that, probably more than any single recruit since I've been doing this. I know, Sam, you've been doing it longer. Brice, I don't know, maybe somebody different. But as far as McCarthy goes, not the like rah-rah tweeting at guys all the time type deal, much more of like actually probably legitimately trying to recruit. You know what I mean? Like almost putting on a coach's cap in a lot of ways. And, I know with Donovan Edwards, there's just a real similarity in mindset, and I think, again, with the context of Michigan, where they are right now nationally, just the tough season, I feel like the mindset with a lot of guys in this class is exactly what the program needs. We'll see if it comes to fruition on the field, but I think from a mentality standpoint, led by McCarthy, I'd probably say this about the last class too, the 20 class as well, but just, I think, a different mentality, much more let's go to work type deal. And it's lemons out of lemon or lemonade out of lemons, or however you want to put it. So.
Yeah. Now it gets really interesting to see what the timeline for this extension, these extension talks, what they really look like. I mean, if it's really the end of the season and this is something that could wrap up quickly, I think that the timeline is more involved than that. This is my opinion. I'm stating my opinion. This is not a report, but I think that in addition to really taking a deep dive into the issues that maybe they need to address in the program, because this is an administrator. This is from the admin level coming in and saying, all right, well, we're going to sit down and we're going to find out. We're going to look at this together. Explain to me why this didn't work and why that didn't work. All right, now how do you fix it? I mean, can you fix that with what you have here, or do you need to change something? Do you need to change what you do and how you do it, or do you need to change who's doing it? That is a part of it. But I think another part of it is I really think understanding what the options are on both sides. And I don't think that's what Jim Harbaugh set out to do. I think Jim Harbaugh, you leave it up to him, man. Like, let's get this done. Let's sign a deal. I think it's Michigan that's been kind of like, hey, let's be more deliberate with this. Let's, kind of look at the program, and then let's kind of see what the options are as a whole. Now, I don't think that means that Jim Harbaugh goes to the pros. I think that it means that the timeline will allow for them to understand what, if any, pro options there are. And then, kind of react accordingly. I mean, if it winds up being an opportunity out there that he really wants to pursue, and I'm not saying that that's going to be the case, but it certainly would maybe change the thinking on both sides. I think what will ultimately happen is I don't think that the NFL will be the option that a lot of people are suggesting or predicting it will be. And I think that Michigan, after looking at this, they do this deep dive. I think they're going to say, all right, we think we understand the changes you need to make. This is what we think you need to do. Now, if you do that, then we're good. Let's make this happen. And let's see if we can get this thing back on track. That's how I think it's going to play out. It maybe won't play out on the timeline that people were expecting it to play out on, but I think they eventually get to extension. Steve and Brice, I don't know what you guys think. Give me your take before we start getting to some questions.
To be honest, I could see this drag into January. I feel like if they didn't sign it now, they're not in a rush. They want to take all their time. They want to look at all their options. They want to make sure everything with that extension or that contract or whatever is to their liking on both sides. And so they're going to, if it's done before the signing day, I don't feel like they're going to rush to get it done a day later. That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I think he's right. He said that he doesn't think if they weren't in a rush to get it done before signing day. He has a point, Steve. I mean, that's really the time crunch, right?
Yeah.
If you can get it done before signing day, why would you rush to get it done before you understand what the NFL options are?
Right. They have the letters now, right? And the season's it was all about the season's over. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it looks like the season is over.
Right.
So I'm not sure. I'm with you as far as like from Harbaugh's standpoint. I think more of a let's get it done. And Michigan, they're not done trying to recruit this class, right? There are some other guys out there, so I think something's got to be done to give them at least enough time with a few of these remaining guys to kind of say, hey, this is the picture. This is what we're going with moving forward. To not try to catch these guys off guard. And give themselves the best shot to close even stronger in February.
All right, so let's start getting to some questions. I'll put them up on the screen here real quick from Jordan Eggleston. So where do they go now? Rooks, Flip Benny. There's another question along those lines. What are your thoughts on Michigan getting Benny back in the fold? That is, if you're looking for, maybe options for the late signing period. For those that missed it, Oak Park defensive tackle Rayshawn Benny he did not sign with Michigan State. Now, before he committed to me, you guys, we covered this recruitment intensely. We were all over it, right? I mean, even Josh Hinchke. Josh Hinchke is saying, man, it's football beat, yeah. Football recruiting beat. Nah, that's not really Josh Hinchke's deal, right? Josh Hinchke is, I go to a basketball game. but I'm not about to be out in the cold watching football. But he did it. I don't know if Hinchke's watching, one of our crew members over at TMI. But he went out to watch Rayshawn Benny, and I remember, I think that was when I was in Florida, and he called me and said, "Hey, man, hey, he's wearing Michigan gloves. That's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. He's wearing Michigan gloves." And then he went down to get a picture after the game. He went in the locker room. He said, "Man, the coaches let me in the locker room. Rayshawn Benny was dressed head to toe in Michigan stuff." And when I say head to toe, I mean he even had on the Scully. He had on the thermal. That was Michigan, head to toe, Michigan. Everything was pointing Michigan. And then the Wolverines dropped that game to Michigan State. One of the worst. I mean, that's still, to me, up there with App State. I know some people say worse than App State. Some people think it's a hyperbole. It was a bad loss for the Wolverines, considering what that Michigan State team, how depleted they were, and what Michigan was coming off of. Now, we've since learned that Michigan isn't that good either. Still, though, you would think they would have had enough to beat that Michigan State team. I digress. That was when things really seemed to turn tangibly. I mean, Michigan State had been making a push already. Mel Tucker had rescued that recruitment. They were done for when Mark D'Antonio was there. He was, Rayshawn was like, I mean, he was very, very candid. Like, I remember talking to him, he was like, "There's no way I would ever go to Iowa. Look at all those, lawsuits they got going on out there with the players. I'm not, how are they going to treat me? I'm not looking at Iowa. I know a lot of people were talking about them." He was not feeling Michigan State under Mark D'Antonio, but that new staff really came in and developed a relationship. But Michigan had seemingly the strongest relationship between Sharon and the great job that he had done, kind of connecting with Mom. And then Sean Nua, and you can speak to this, Brice. Rayshawn really seemed to, along the way, like Nua.
So Nua got on Rayshawn Benny pretty early in the process, and on top of that, he was the first coach out of any school to hit him up and say, "Hey, what do you think about playing defensive line?" Whereas a lot of schools offered him to play offensive line. So that really took his appeal. And then on top of that, on all of that, Sean Nua just connects with these kids. He seems like, that personality he has, charismatic. He's passionate about the school. He's passionate about the defensive line. And a lot of guys just like playing for him. Obviously, right now, a big thing is people want to see the 4-star, 5-stars defensive linemen coming in, and they're not right now. So that's a big hit on him. But at the same time, he's not stopping recruiting. He's not stopping working. And this is a kid that Michigan's still very much in the mix for. Michigan's been continuing the contact even before this news of him not signing today, and they still feel like he's got a shot, or they feel like they have a shot to potentially get him back, hopefully in the fold.
Yeah, I can't say that I know what changed, Steve, to make him not sign. Hell, but I don't know what changed to make things go Michigan State's direction. So I guess if things change so abruptly in that direction, who's to say things can't change very abruptly back the other way? This is where the timing kind of actually helps Michigan, you would think, Steve, because if he's signing in February, okay, well, this coaching situation is settled by then. You gotta think that was at least a part of the thinking for him initially, because that was when the uncertain talk about the instability of the coaching staff really first started ramping up, was around the time where Rayshawn was getting ready to make his decision. Now it's obviously fevered pitch, but if he's not going to sign early, if he's not going to sign until February, well, by that time, Michigan should have whoever they're going to have in place.
So I wonder if he did more research on like brand reach, maybe. So initial reaction, obviously, though, not signing is significant. It always is. It means you're definitely having second thoughts. I don't know. I mean, I'm not, there's been plenty of, I don't know the percentage of guys that actually end up signing with the program they're originally committed to when they, I know the early signing period's only been around a few years, but I feel like it's low. If there's something stopping you now, it's only more doubt is going to creep in, I feel like, as time continues. So, yeah, obviously, quietly one of the better pieces of news for Michigan, really, because he's a tip-top target for them. I have dreams about being asked about Michigan's defensive tackle recruiting at this point. We know how important it is. It's something we hear about literally every single day. I think I even saw Matt Dudek literally respond to somebody on Twitter today asking about the defensive tackle recruiting. It's the number one topic we talk about. So a guy like Benny not signing with Michigan State is pretty significant. And yeah, the timing, plenty of time now, really. And as far as recruiting goes, 2 months is an eternity. So Michigan will have plenty of time to get their ducks in a row, make one last final run at him and see where things go. But anytime a kid doesn't sign, we talk about Jaden Hood deciding to sign today. I think the consensus would have been if he hadn't signed today, there would have been real doubt about whether or not he was really going to end up at Michigan. So that's just a universal thing, not just that specific deal, but might be the case with Benny too.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of portal questions. So here's one. Why can't we just go shopping for some transfer candidates? I actually think that's going to be a big deal. I mean, and again, that's not just Michigan. That's going to be a big deal, a bigger deal across the college football landscape. I don't know what you guys think, but I think the portal is going to be such a big part of what teams do that they're going to have to, just like you have a recruiting staff, right? I think you're going to have at least one guy on staffs now whose focus is the portal. It's going to be with as populated as it's going to be moving forward. You almost have to have someone that's keeping an eye on it at all times.
So for my opinion on the portal, it's one of those things of where it can be not just a Band-Aid, but it can be a full-on patch and seal if you find the right type of guys. You look at Mike Dana, the guy that they picked up from Central Michigan, whereas, you wouldn't think he would be much, but a guy who was a top guy at Central Michigan comes to Michigan, makes an impact right away, goes on to be a player for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think for Michigan, this was the best case scenario of how the day could have played out. You only lose about 2 guys. Everyone signs. Everyone, even Jaden Hood signs. That gives you all the time not to worry about, we got to keep working on Jaden Hood till February. You could just focus all your efforts on the transfer portal. And guys, you can do evaluations on that maybe kind of fell under the radar just because there weren't, summer camps. There wasn't that spring evaluation. And at that point, you can maybe pick up some, late risers and stuff like that. And you can look at the transfer portal. So I think that's a good strategy by Michigan. And then I think this is best case scenario. What could have happened today? Happened.
Yeah, one guy that I think will be intriguing for them is the Western Michigan.
Yeah,
the Western Michigan guy, Treshawn Hayward. I'm here. He's definitely on the radar.
Skyline.
Yeah, absolutely right. Ann Arbor Skyline. A kid who just was a tackling machine over at Western Michigan, man. I mean, a guy who went out. I think that he wound up having well over, I think it's like over 100 tackles. I think they said last year, as he was just all over the field. Him being in the portal, him being a guy that's coming back home, so to speak. If the Wolverines are able to get him, I mean, I just pulled up his stats here. Last year, guys, 142 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. He was the MAC Defensive Player of the Year, and he's an Ann Arbor Skyline guy. And you're talking about a position, Steve, where you saw how depth starved they were when Cam McGrone gets hurt, and this is no disrespect intended. But Cam McGrone gets hurt, and the next guy they go to is a walk-on. And that's just, if you're Michigan, that ought to tell you where your depth is at certain positions as you go to your second string and you're in the walk-on category. And again, that's not intending any disrespect. It's just laying out how much of a need there is for, of course, the linebackers in this recruiting class. You hope that Jaden Hood and, obviously you look across the line, Tyler McLaurin, Junior Colson. I mean, you look at these guys, you're hoping that they're coming in ready to contribute right away. But if you got a guy like Treshawn Hayward, who's played at a high level in college football, he's already grizzled. He's already ready to go. I mean, you can just plug and play with a guy like that, Steve.
I was going to sign him up, right? I mean, if That's the kind of guy, an All-American level player, which I believe he was an All-American, or you said MAC Defensive Player of the Year at least. That's the kind of guy. I mean, if he's interested, you at the very least take a strong look at him if he's interested. Let alone the connection there with Ann Arbor and the need as you talk about, with the walk-on being the backup, even though they should be able to play their younger players a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball. But either way. Yeah, the thing about the portal that's going to be interesting to me is now that it's like sort of like, I guess you'd call it in the mainstream, is it's really just going to kind of become another like recruiting. It's going to be the same as recruiting eventually, where you're going to get guys that are entering, especially this 1-year transfer stuff, the free ticket. There's going to be situations I feel like where Michigan's going to be recruiting against like a Notre Dame or a Michigan State or an Ohio State, maybe even like for some of these guys. So that's going to be an interesting thing as the portal continues to grow and more guys leave and decide what they want to do. But Hayward for sure, that was easily a noteworthy one to see when that decision was made. But yeah, defensive tackle, like they're going to definitely at least do their evals. And I like what Brice said. Something I've mentioned before as well about great defensive tackles don't grow on trees. It's one of the hardest, one of the thinnest positions in the country every year. Not to mention the vast majority of elite prospects at defensive tackle are usually from the bigger states down south. Georgia, Florida, Texas, out west in California. There's usually a couple. There aren't a ton of them in the Midwest. So, what it'll be interesting to see is if any new names do pop up, if Michigan was able to find a way to eval some guys that maybe didn't get a lot of looks early on. Because I think this cycle, more than any, you have a better shot of maybe finding a real diamond in the rough because a lot of guys didn't even play a senior season across the country. So they still have options. I mean, don't get me wrong, they got work to do, but I think there are some different options out there for them.
So how about this one? Do we know if Pius Ojugo signed? Do we know that Central Michigan commit from River Rouge, a guy that Michigan looked at early in the process, but when COVID hit and it wiped out camps, I mean, Pius Ojugo was a guy that they were really going to look hard at camp. He's intriguing as a big athletic kid, 6'3", 330 pounds. His cousin is Ruka Horoho. His cousin is Mario Ojemudia. What's the other Ojemudia that's playing for the Broncos right now? Can't remember his name. He was at Iowa.
Michael
Ojemudia. Yeah, Michael Ojemudia. So you have athleticism in the bloodlines. You feel like he's going to be a player, but he is extremely raw. So when camps were wiped out, that's when you saw them essentially back off of Pius Ojugo. Now, Daniel's asking, will Michigan kick the tires? I don't know if he signed.
He did not. I just checked.
Okay.
Central Michigan. He did not sign with Central today.
So, I mean, that's intriguing. That's an intriguing one, especially when you look at the need that they have for size inside. I think they'll look portal first. It's not quite Jonathan Hankins. I remember Jonathan Hankins' recruitment. And I remember Jonathan Hankins coming to camp and they did some one-on-ones with him. This was, I believe, Rich was still the coach. Rich Rod was maybe in his first or second year as coach, I think. It all runs together, forgive me. But Jonathan Hankins, they put him through like 5 straight one-on-ones. Because you know how when you guys have been to camps, when a coach wants to see a guy, it's like rep. You keep going. No, he's not repping out. We want to see you against every guy. They did that with Jonathan Hankins. He must have been about 350 at the time. I mean, he was, it was not in shape, Jonathan Hankins, right? So, man, they must have did 3 reps, and they're looking around. Where the hell is Hankins? Man, they went inside Oosterbaan. Jonathan Hankins is sprawled out laid on the carpet. I mean, just laid out. And at that point, there's no way we're taking Jonathan Hankins. Now, of course, that was a foolish thing to do. I guess you got to, on one hand, you're saying the guy isn't in shape. You're wondering if you're going to be able to get him right. But he definitely had that stuff you can't teach, that off-snap quickness at about 340, 350. That it's like, hey, man, yeah, if he could do that at 340, 350, imagine if you get him down to 330, which is what Ohio State said. and it was different. He goes down to Ohio State. He's a ball player and a multi-year pro. I don't see that. It's a different dynamic with Jonathan Hankins knew the game. He had played the game. Pius Ojugo is just super raw. He has not really learned the game yet. He's not an instinctive player yet. A lot of potential, but a different challenge with him. Now, great coaching can develop that, right? But it is a gamble still. Different kind of gamble than Jonathan Hankins was, in my opinion, guys. So it's an interesting one. What do you guys think of this one?
Michigan
Will Hart is in the portal. Is that odd to you?
They just signed a pretty good kicker punter today.
Yeah.
I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, but that's another, Tommy DeMond, man. I think one of the, those are always they're always naturally going to be overlooked. But he is a guy that they is one of the best in the country at both, I want to say, right? And I don't know if it's related or not. Interesting though. I mean, he was a Ray Guy finalist a couple of years ago, wasn't he? I mean, so just had Hedge. He just posted the story on that actually. So
yeah, hey man, and look, that's how the portal is going to be. I think a lot of this is going to be an interesting part of the portal. All right, a lot of portal work is going to be done before guys get to the portal. And so I just talked about a violation, right? What do you mean portal work is going to be done before they get to the portal? That's illegal. You can't do that. Well, you can if you are going through coaches, high school coaches, I should say, if you're going through trainers, you're going through intermediaries, people who can sort of get next to a recruit, be talking to him, seeing what he's thinking, seeing if he's ready to go. So I think post-spring ball, whatever spring ball looks like, that's when you're going to see it's going to be a huge rush right after, the semester hits. And then there's going to be a post-spring ball push or rush. And I think the work that schools do, and this is why you need a portal guy, in my opinion, because you got to be a little forward thinking. Like if it's me and I'm Michigan, a guy, and I said this on the podcast, you guys might remember 3-4 weeks ago. I said, and I said it heading into the Penn State game. I'm watching this Penn State game looking at Lance Dixon. I'm looking at Lance Dixon and saying, man, I'm going to kick the tire. I'm just going to see. Is Lance Dixon happy at Penn State? Because he's not, that's a 5-star guy, guys, that's not getting a lot of run. That's a 5-star guy that's not getting a lot of run that you can kick the tires on without touching them directly. So I would, if it's me, when I say, you're doing portal work before a guy hits the portal, that's an example of what I'm talking about. And that's why I think you need a portal guy and linebacker. I just throw that one out there because I know linebacker is such a position to need. But that's the kind of thing that I think is going to be very, very important in the weeks and months to come. Let's get a couple of more questions in here before we call it a wrap on this live video version of the Michigan Insider Podcast. You guys got anything on George Rooks? I had Brian Doan on earlier this morning. He said, man, I just put a pick in. he said, I'm tired.
Is that what he said?
He said, I think it's Penn State. He said, but am I confident? I just put a pick in.
I don't think it's going to be Michigan, right? I suspect it'd be Penn State or Boston College, whoever. I think we joked that I don't know if Drew Kendall committed to and signed today or not. We joked that they were going to jointly announce when they were going to commit today. Like I said, their timelines have been so wacky throughout the recruitment. But as far as Michigan goes with Rooks, no, I don't think so. Definitely going to end up somewhere else.
Yeah, it's such a tough one to call. I know, Brice, you covered that one extensively. How many decision dates has he had? It's been 5 or 6.
It's a lot. It just kept getting pushed back each month, and then he kept saying he got closer and closer and closer, and finally I'm like, you got to be off the ledge. I'm like, how close can this ledge be to, and George Rooks is in that same boat. He's just a guy that, he seemed on the verge of making decisions several times, never pulled the trigger, and he's the type of kid that I know Michigan hasn't given up on. They really like his sister, got her master's degree from Michigan, so there's a connection there.
Played on a women's basketball team.
She did.
Mhm.
But I just get that hunch he's going to stay East Coast in terms of Penn State or Boston College right now.
Yeah. Definitely, we got some questions on the board before we came in about. All right, I mean, people are already talking about next year's recruiting class. I mean, there's a lot to be determined with this staff before you really get thick in that. There are a few guys that really stand out as possibilities. And of course, a couple of guys we talked a lot about, and it really sticks. They really stick out to me because they continue to talk about going to school together. They seem determined to do so. They are in frequent contact. And then, it's on a different level, right? You guys have been doing this a long time. How many times have you guys heard kids talk about we're going to go to school together, right? You hear it so often, and it never really
doesn't happen.
Yeah, one of the things that is unique about this, though, is that the kids start talking. Now their dads are connecting. So, dads are frequently just reaching out to one another, calling one another. Hey, man, what do you think about so-and-so? What do you think? Hey, we're going to come out to Cali and going to visit USC. Let's hook up. Who am I talking about? Will Johnson from Grosse Pointe South, a legacy kid, a 5-star prospect, a big-time talent. And then you got Damani Jackson, who Steve, you think he might be a top 10 player in this class, right? If he were in this class, and his dad, a diehard Michigan fan, and it's since been said that he was really seriously contemplating committing to Michigan when he was on that dead period visit last month. Michigan, I think, benefits from those guys saying they want to go to school together, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
I agree. Because of Johnson, more if they're serious about playing with each other, it's still, I know Will Johnson just visited Ohio State. I believe, did Allen lower his crystal ball confidence a little bit?
He did, but I just don't.
But kept it on Michigan, though, right?
Yeah.
I think that's more significant than anything, because how easily or how many times we've seen a kid go down to Columbus and come back, and the whole recruitment has taken a 180, right? So for it to maybe not quite do that, I actually think bodes pretty well for Michigan, particularly because I don't believe he wants to wait super, super long to make a decision. He's talked about deciding in the spring, right? So if that's the case, how many more is he going to go down there again? Is he going to visit me? It's like these guys aren't able to take many visits right now with the way things are. And yeah, I mean, you think about it, if he does decide in the spring and say it is Michigan, then there you go, right? I mean, you got to feel good about your possibility of getting Damani. Notwithstanding that you already had a decent chance with him before these two guys even talk about playing with each other because of his childhood affinity for Michigan, his dad's affinity to the program. So don't try not to get too ahead of yourself with it, especially if you're a fan, you're following the ins and outs of recruiting with this. But I mean, you talk about, one of the better 1-2 combos they could get at any position in recent memory. That this would be pretty far up the list.
All right, so let's wrap it up with a broad brush question, guys, because this is going to be our last podcast until the new year. Probably. There's no look, man. We need a break. This is the grind, man. It's the grind. I still got to do the Basketball Insider tomorrow with Tim McCormick. So we are taking next week off of the podcast schedule for sure. But by the time we come on next, which will be just after the new year, how do you think things will shake out? Do you think there will be Michigan be heading in a different position at head coach? Or do you think it'll be Jim with his staff mostly intact? Or the last option, do you think it will be Jim Harbaugh with significant staff changes, starting with you, Brice Marich?
That's tough. I'm going to go with door 3. I'm going to say Jim Harbaugh, significant staff turnover. I think he's made that commitment to the recruits that signed their LOIs. That he had virtual visits with all of them a week before here, and he talked to them. Left Andrell, Gio, Raheem, all 3. I went to go see. Told me the same thing. They said, obviously he hasn't signed anything. They know that, but when they did talk to him about that, he made it clear he wants to be at Michigan. And so I think he's going to make it a point of emphasis, even if the contract isn't what it was 4 or 5 years ago, to sign that extension and to try to get Michigan back. I think he knows he's got to make some sort of change. It can't just be the same thing. So I think we're going to see some sort of change. But I think in the end, I just got a feeling Harbaugh will be back.
Steve?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Door number 3. Maybe some recruiting aimed hires, right? We've talked about that a little bit. I think that's a necessity.
Yeah.
I do think he'll be back.
Yeah.
I don't know the definition of significant. I'd say multiple maybe changes on the staff. Wouldn't necessarily put a number on it, but I do think you'll see some notable changes. And I think for the good, obviously, I think Michigan needs a little more juice on the recruiting trail, maybe on the defensive side of the ball, if we're being honest. So that would be my inclination right now. But I do think that Harbaugh will be back, and with a few changes made on the side.
Yeah, I'm right there in the same boat with you guys, thinking that they will eventually wind up extending. It won't be quick, in my opinion, like a lot of people want it to be. And why should, at this point, what benefit do you get out of it? I think you probably benefit more from taking your time to really take a look at the issues and diagnosing the issues, I should say. And then also, seeing the options that are out there. People say, well, how can Jim Harbaugh want to come back and still look at the options? First of all, let's be clear. I think it's obvious, how much he wants to be the head coach of the University of Michigan. But if the other side hasn't made it obvious that they're ready for that to happen yet, then, of course, you have some, you owe it to yourself to kind of at least listen to what's out there. And that's my opinion on how things are. I think eventually, though, they get to the point where they come together. Jim Harbaugh continues to be the head coach. Extension is signed. And there are multiple, as you said, Steve, multiple staff changes. And my hope, and I've been very, very bullish on this, is that recruiting is at the forefront of his additions, not at the absolute expense of all other attributes. I say, hey, they need recruiters, and people say, always, you got to be able to coach and develop. Of course, I'm not, saying you hire Zach Smith. Like you hire a guy that only can recruit and is an absolute zero in everything else, right? I'm not saying that. And people who don't know who Zach Smith is, he was that Ohio State guy, that guy. But I'm not saying hire a dude like that. I'm saying if you have the comparison that I've been using, because it's functional here, is Bob Shoop, Steve Clinkscale. Now, those aren't the only two guys considered, but those were two. They hired Bob Shoop, or Jim hired Bob Shoop, and Steve Clinkscale was another guy that he obviously, as we know, talked to. No one will argue that Steve Clinkscale has a more impressive coaching resume than Bob Shoop. He doesn't. Bob Shoop has been a head coach. He's been a defensive coordinator for longer. He's been a secondary coach for years. He's widely regarded as a really good ball coach, right? Steve Clinkscale is no slouch in that department, though. I think he has the number 2 secondary and number 2 pass defense in the SEC right now at Kentucky. That is a recurring theme with their secondaries there at Kentucky. So he is a good coach, but he is an elite recruiter. So when you look at the gap between the two as coaches, maybe you have Shoop here and you have Clink here. But when you talk about recruiters, it's like this. I mean, it's not even Clink is so much more of a recruiter. So that's when I say recruiting at the forefront. That's what I mean. That's what I hope is the focus as Jim retools his staff, that he says, you know what? A prerequisite for these hires is I want me a dog recruiter. Because, and what do I mean? We look at this class. This is a good class, Steve. Is it top 10? Did you look at the latest rankings? They were right on the borderline. They were 10th after Edwards committed. I'm sure there was some shuffling there, though, between like 8
and 15, but it's a top 12, I would imagine for sure. I'm looking right now.
Yeah, and so it's not like we're talking like Michigan is a bad recruiting. Of course, Michigan isn't a bad recruiting staff. We just sat here for over an hour, and espoused the virtues of this recruiting class and the big time lands they had at the very end. And I'm looking at them right now, Steve, and I see Michigan right at number 11 in the rankings. But we are talking about the difference between a very good class like this one, and outstanding under the circumstances when you look at everything they had to battle against, but a difference between being good and being elite. Have you looked at the Ohio State classes? Right now, some Michigan fans think you can't recruit at Michigan can never recruit at that level because they don't cheat and they don't take as many academic exceptions as other schools. I think that actually sends an opposite. It means something totally different. It means that's why you need elite recruiters, because you don't cheat, because you don't take as many academic exceptions. That's why you need guys that are more, bulls in the game. If you have those limitations and you don't have the best of the best, the most elite recruiters, then your ceiling is significantly lower, in my opinion. That's why I'm so adamant about it. I'm not ready to concede Michigan recruiting at an elite level, Steve. I'm not saying that I'm definitely right. I'm just saying we haven't seen my formula. We haven't seen Michigan, chock full of, 7, 8 elite recruiters on the trail. And let's see what that looks like before we say it doesn't work. That's all I'm saying.
They have the money to pay those level of recruiters to come in too. You know what I mean? It's not as if it's anything like that. Yeah, it's always been, like a handful of guys kind of carrying the weight. It's like I feel like Sharon Moore is recruiting like 47 guys in a class right now. I mean, you talk every, so I think they're, for Michigan, maybe top to bottom to be a little bit stronger on the recruiting trail, I think is, and yeah, like you said, I think it's very achievable without sacrificing like actual coaching ability. Not to mention, just getting all around, like you can find all around guys that can do both. And the thing with recruiting, it's like 80% just passion for actually recruiting, and it's like, those are guys that I think Michigan more than capable of finding. They know what one looks like. They've had guys like that on the staff. We talked about Sharon Moore. We said Chris Partridge the same way. It's not like they don't know what that is, and so I definitely
have a recruiter. You can have an elite recruiter that doesn't cheat. We've seen them, to your
right.
point.
Absolutely. And so, and the bigger overarching point is, if you're Michigan, you have to kind of compensate for your shortcomings or the things that you can't do on the recruiting trail. That's why you have to hire the best of the best when it comes to recruiting elite talent, because that's going to be the battle, is convincing them and working them. So,
yeah. He said, David Mendenhall said if Jim's contract is lowered, he'll be able to afford some recruiting. I think that's a great point. I think that's going to be one of the benefits of an amended contract in the grand scheme of things. So we'll see how it goes. I agree with this. I think Sharon Moore does deserve a raise with the recruiting work he's done. Absolutely is the case. So, but hey, folks, look, maybe we'll do it this way. I mean, give us some feedback. Should we do the podcast this way moving forward? With live user feedback, video stream. If you like it this way, drop it in the comment section. I'll keep an eye on it. It was an impromptu thing, and really, it was about Jaden Hood. Jaden Hood wanted an announcement. He said, we can work something out for you, young man. We can do our podcast live, bring you in as a special guest. Boom, you have your announcement. And so here he is, officially signed for the Maize and Blue. But if you want to see more like this, we can certainly put this in the rotation. We might even convince Steve to open up his video feed. Maybe.
Depends on what time of day. Depends on what time of day it is. So we'll have to get the makeup artist in and get me set up here. So
yeah. Well, hey, we got a lot more coverage still to come over on the MichiganInsider.com. So many more interviews. I got a lot of A lot of content from the Donovan Edwards signing this afternoon. We have our experts chiming in, our signing day superlatives for all of the big-time storylines from signing day. So much to come, and still a little time left on our 60% off annual deal over on the site right now. So it doesn't get any better, any more affordable to get the MichiganInsider.com for a full year. Still 60% off. I think what folks got like 3 hours left, Steve. Doesn't it end tonight?
Yeah, tonight or tomorrow, but I think tonight.
Yeah,
so sign up now if you're going to do it.
Yep, still a little time. I don't think there'll be any extensions this time. I think the update staff is ready to take a break too. But guys, thanks a lot for joining us tonight on the Michigan Insider Podcast. We'll be back after the new year. Going to take a break, a little bit of a hiatus next week, and then we'll be back in the new year with another edition of the Michigan Recruiting Insider. Thanks, guys. See you on the board.
See ya.